Well, my dears, here we are. There's that message again, which means that there's going to be a jump. Oh, this is very upsetting. Oh, well, onward, ever onward. Where was I? Tonight, I want to read you a story by Neil Gaiman, whom you know is one of my very favorite contemporary authors. Some things he has done, written, Coraline, Neverwhere, The Sandman, American Gods, Stardust, which I particularly love, and Good Omens, which he wrote with Terry Pratchett. That's their 1990 novel. I'm also very fond of Good Omens. And it was turned into a film with Michael Sheen and David Tennant. So, anywho, as to tonight, I want to do a short story, a very short story, but anyway, it's by Neil Gaiman, and it's called Good Boys Deserve Favors. And here we go. My own children delight in hearing true tales from my childhood. The time my father threatened my sister's front teeth twice, when I pretended to be twins, and even the day I accidentally killed the gerbil. I've never told them this story. I would be hard put to tell you quite why not. When I was 9, the school told us that we could pick any musical instrument we wanted. Some boys chose the violin, the clarinet, the oboe. Some chose the timpani, the pianoforte, the viola. I was not big for my age, and I, alone in the junior school, elected to play the double bass, chiefly because I love the incongruity of the idea. I love delighting in carrying around an instrument much taller than I was. The double bass belonged to the school, and I was deeply impressed by it. I learned to bow, although I had little interest in bowing technique, preferring to pluck the huge metal strings by hand. My right index finger was permanently puffed with white blisters until the blisters eventually became calluses. I delighted in discovering the history of the double bass, that it was no part of the sharp, scraping family of the violin, the viola, the cello. Its curves were gentler, softer, more sloping. It was, in fact, the final family of instruments, the viol family, and was, more correctly, the bass viol. I learned this from the double bass teacher, an elderly musician imported by the school to teach me and also to teach a couple of senior boys for a few hours each week. He was a clean-shaven man, balding and intense, with long, calloused fingers. I would do all I could to make him tell me about the bass, tell me of his experience as a session musician, of his life cycling around the country. He had a contraption attached to the back of his bicycle on which his bass rested, and he pedaled sedately through the countryside with the bass behind him. He had never married. Good double, poor husbands. He had many such observations. There were no great male cellists, that's one I remember, and his opinion of viola players of either sex was scarcely repeatable. He called the school double bass she. She could do with a good coat of varnish, he'd say, and you take care of her, she'll take care of you. I was not a particularly good double bass player. There was little enough that I could do with the instrument on my own, and all I remember of my enforced membership in the school orchestra was getting lost in the score and sneaking glances at the cellos beside me, waiting for them to turn the page so I could start playing once more, punctuating the orchestral schoolboy cacophony with low. It has been too many years, and I've almost forgotten how to read music. But when I dream of reading music, I still dream in the bass clef. All cows eat grass. Good boys deserve favors always. After lunch each day, the boys who played instruments walked down to the music school and had music practice, while the boys who didn't lay on their beds and read their books and their comics. I rarely practiced. Instead, I would take a book down to the music school and read it, surreptitiously perched on my high stool, holding onto the smooth brown wood of the bass, the bow in one hand, the better to fool the casual and uninspired. My bowing scrubbed and scratched where it should have glided and boomed. My fingering was hesitant and clumsy. Other boys worked at their instruments. I did not. As long as I was sitting at the bass for half an hour each day, no one cared. I had the nicest, largest room to practice in, too, as the double bass was kept in a cupboard in the master music room. Our school, I should tell you, had only one famous old boy. This old boy had been expelled from the school after driving a sports car across the cricket pitch, while drunk. How he had gone on to fame and fortune, first as a minor actor in Ealing comedies, then as the token English cad in any number of Hollywood pictures. He was never a true star, but during the Sunday afternoon film screening, we would cheer if ever he appeared. When the door handle to the practice room clicked and turned, I put my book down on the piano and leaned forward, turning the page of the dog-eared 52 musical exercises for the double bass. And I heard the headmaster say, "The music school was purpose-built, of course," and they came in. They were the headmaster and the head of the music department, a faded, bespectacled man whom I rather liked, and the deputy head of the music department who conducted the school orchestra and disliked me cordially. And there could be no mistaking it. The famous old boy himself, in company with a fragrant, fair woman who held his arm and looked as if she might also be a movie star. I stopped pretending to play and slipped off my high stool and stood up respectfully, holding the bass by the neck. The headmaster told them about the sound drive to raise the money to build the music school, and he stressed that the next stage of rebuilding would need significant further donations, and he was just beginning to expound upon the cost of double glazing when the fragrant woman said, "Just look at him. Is that cute or what?" And they all looked at me. "It's so big," said the woman, "and he's so small." "Hey, but we're stopping you practicing us something." The headmaster and the head of the music department beamed at me expectantly. The deputy head of the music department, who was under no illusions as to my musical skills, started to explain that the first violin was practicing next door and would be delighted to play for them, and "I want to hear him," she said. "How old are you, kid?" 11, miss," I said. She nudged the famous old boy in the ribs. "He called me miss," she said. This amused her. "Go on, play us something." The famous old boy nodded, and they stood there and looked at me. Not even for the competent. I was far from competent. But I slid my bottom up onto the stool again and crooked my fingers around the neck and picked up my bow, heart pounding like a timpani in my chest, and prepared to embarrass myself. Even 20 years later, I remember. I did not even look at 52 musical exercises for the double bass. I played something. It arched and boomed and sang and reverberated. The bow glided over strange and confident arpeggios, over strange and confident arpeggios. And then I put down the bow and plucked a complex and intricate pizzicato melody out of the bass. I did things with the bass that an experienced jazz bass player with hands as big as my head would not have done. I played, and I played, and I played, tumbling down into the four taut metal strings, clutching the instrument as I had never clutched a human being. And elated, I stopped. The blonde woman led the applause, but they all clapped. Even with a strange expression on his face, the deputy head of music. I didn't know it was such a versatile instrument, said the headmaster. Very lovely piece. Modern, yet classical. Very fine. Bravo. And then he shepherded the four of them from the room, and I sat there, utterly drained, the fingers of my left hand stroking the neck of the bass, the fingers of my right caressing her strings. Like any true story, the end of the affair is messy. The following day, carrying the huge instrument across the courtyard to the school chapel for orchestra practice in a light rain, I slipped on the wet bricks and fell forward. The wooden bridge of the bass was smashed and the front was cracked. It was sent away to be repaired, but when it returned, it was not the same. The strings were higher, harder to pluck. The new bridge seemed to have been installed at the wrong angle. There was, even to my untutored ear, a change in the timbre. I had not taken care of her. She would no longer take care of me. When, the following year, with the double bass, the thought of changing to a new instrument seemed vaguely disloyal, while the dusty black bass that sat in a cupboard in my new school's music rooms seemed to have taken a dislike to me. I was marked another's. And I was tall enough now that there would be nothing incongruous about my standing behind the double bass. And soon enough, I knew there would be girls. And that is Good Boys Deserve Favors by Neil Gaiman. Absolutely delightful. I hope you did too. Excuse me, but I am fighting a something, and so I'm going to hold it right here. I'm not going to try to follow this up with some other short piece. Whew, sorry, loves. I really am fighting something. I hope it goes away soon, because I do not need it, nor do you. Goodbye for now, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much, my dears. Good night.